A spatial rift connecting to another world suddenly appeared on Earth. Numerous terrifying monsters poured through the rift and invaded Earth. They killed humans crazily and destroyed cities. What was most terrifying was that the monsters carried a dreadful virus in their bodies, which could 100% infect men who were scratched by them. How exactly should humanity survive this great disaster? This woman's name is Mary. At her command, the soldiers fired several flare rounds for illumination. After the flares landed, Mary moved forward nervously. The soldiers quickly grabbed their weapons and aimed at the front. Through the dim light, it could be seen that these soldiers were all women, but there was no fear in their eyes. When roars came from ahead, they refused to back down, shouting loudly to boost morale. At this point, a group of monsters appeared in sight. Mary immediately led the soldiers into bloody battle against the monsters. But where did these monsters come from? Mary's husband Mark answered this question. Many years ago, a spatial rift suddenly appeared on Earth. Monsters from another dimension traveled through this rift to Earth, frantically destroying cities and hunting humans. They not only had sharp claws and fangs, but also carried viruses in their bodies. If scratched by them, the virus would turn humans into monsters too. But so far, this virus seems to only infect men. As the number of men was decreasing, the responsibility of fighting the monsters fell on women. With her excellent leadership skills, Mary became the leader of the soldiers. When the monsters weren't attacking human camps, Mary would stay at home knitting hats for her daughter Winnie, or tell stories about the beauty of the world in the past. She said the earth was colorful back then, very beautiful and peaceful. There were also many lovely animals. Winnie asked if they could still be found now. Mary said there should still be some. They just didn't know where they were hiding. She firmly believed that one day humans would drive the monsters away and restore peace to their homeland. At that time, the animals would surely reappear too. Later, Mary and her husband celebrated their daughter's birthday. Winnie blew out the candles excitedly. Then she opened the gift her mother had prepared, a hat that had taken a long time to knit. Winnie said she loved it. Seeing this, Mark also took out his prepared gift. When she opened it, she found a knitted small animal, but she didn't recognize it. Mark said it was a dog.
Maybe someday we'll find you a real one.
As soon as he finished speaking, a soldier suddenly notified Mary that it was time to leave. They knew this camp was no longer safe. Mark immediately told their daughter to pack her essentials. The whole family's mood turned flustered in an instant. While their daughter went to her room to get her things, Mary told her husband a bad news. They had lost several more soldiers just 2 hours ago. Mark comforted her, saying everything would get better. As he spoke, he gently touched the wound on Mary's face with concern. She told him not to worry. It had been 72 hours. She hadn't shown any signs of infection, which meant she was safe. Then the family of 3 and other human survivors walked out of the building. They were about to board the vehicle, planning to head to the undefeated camp under the soldiers' escort. Mary said she needed to lead the convoy. She told her daughter to listen to her father obediently. Then she left without looking back. A few seconds later, everyone got in the car. Winnie leaned worriedly against her father. She kept praying in her heart that everything would be okay. At this point, a soldier beside them, trying to ease the tense atmosphere, took the initiative to talk about the monsters infecting men. She thought women could actually be infected too, but women's neural structures were intricate and complex. The virus couldn't do anything to them. Men's brains were simple and single-minded. That's why they were easily infected. These words successfully made everyone laugh. Winnie's tense mood also relaxed. She leaned against her father's arms and fell asleep. But a few minutes later, suddenly, several rapid gunshots woke her up. Winnie looked at her father in panic. He signaled her not to make a sound. At this point, the soldiers in the car knew something was wrong. They told everyone to stay put, then got out of the car to reinforce immediately. Shortly after the soldiers left, a monster passed by the truck. Everyone in the car was so scared they didn't dare to breathe. Luckily, the monster didn't seem to detect their presence. A woman was suddenly dragged out of the carriage by the monster. Everyone who saw this fled in panic. As soon as they got out of the car, they ran straight into the monsters. Even with the soldiers' fire cover, the monsters still captured many humans, because attacking their bodies alone couldn't kill them. Only cutting off their whole heads would work. Winnie, who had never seen such a scene, was terrified. She and her father hid under the car. They thought the monsters wouldn't find them. But suddenly, the whole truck was lifted. Then Mark took his daughter to hide under another car. When she saw there were others here, Winnie thought this place was relatively safer. But the next second, the monster dragged away the boy on the opposite side. Winnie was both devastated and desperate. To make matters worse, a monster suddenly appeared beside her. After a burst of rapid gunfire, someone chopped off the monster's head with a knife, then they bent down to look under the car. It was Mary who had saved them just in time. She told Winnie to come out quickly, but Winnie was afraid there were other monsters. Mary said the last one had also been killed, but more would probably come soon. But the trucks were all destroyed now. They had to run into the nearby woods. This way, their chances of survival would be higher. At this point, a soldier pointed her gun at an elderly man. The elderly man's arm had been scratched. The soldier couldn't bear to pull the trigger at first, but when she saw him mutating, she pulled the trigger. Mary heard roars coming from afar. She knew more monsters were chasing them. She told everyone to run to the next camp immediately, while she and the soldiers would stay behind to cover them. Mark didn't hesitate. He knew his wife was prepared to die in battle. He immediately took Winnie and ran towards the river. Humanity's current situation wasn't optimistic. Even if they managed to reach the camp by some miracle, they probably wouldn't last long there. Luckily, before the monsters invaded Earth, as an avid fisherman, he had a boat by the river. Mark decided to take his daughter to a deserted island to hide. But before they could be happy for a few seconds, a cry for help came from the woods. Winnie wanted to take others with them, but Mark told her not to be too naive. A man appeared. He asked if the boat was functional. Mark lied and said it wasn't. They were just looking for food. The man suddenly pulled out a gun. Mark was frightened and agreed to take him along. But this was just to stabilize the situation. Because the man's back had been scratched by a monster, Mark knew he would mutate soon. He said he needed to get some gasoline. He walked over to an abandoned car. The man followed him. He didn't see Mark pulling out a dagger at all. After a while, Mark went back to the river alone. He told his daughter to leave quickly. Winnie asked where the man was.
He got scared, he ran off. Come on, help me.
After successfully launching the boat into the water, Mark sailed with his daughter and successfully reached a deserted island, surrounded by the sea on all sides. It was relatively safe, but supplies were very scarce. That's why human survivors hadn't made it their camp. In the following year, Winnie looked across the sea every day, watching the endless wars and artillery fire on the other side. Her eyes were always moist. At this point, a seagull flew overhead. This was the first time Winnie had seen a flying animal in her life. After checking the days, she climbed the cliff and found the seagull's nest. She found 4 eggs inside, so she took 3 of them, because there was almost nothing to eat on the island. Leaving one wouldn't hinder the seagull's reproduction. After taking the eggs home, Winnie excitedly took out her trophy to show her father, but Mark kept complaining. He said that cliff was very slippery. Retrieving bird eggs was really dangerous. Winnie said she could handle it. Mark had to tell his daughter to go home, to light a fire and fry the eggs. But Winnie didn't want to cook. She wanted to chop firewood to train herself instead. As she spoke, she wanted to spar with her father. After all, Mark was a veteran. Even though he had a chronic leg injury from his service, he still defeated Winnie without much effort. After defeating his daughter, Mark said he would continue her special training tomorrow. In the evening, Winnie sat in front of the mirror brushing her hair, looking dejected. Mark asked her what was wrong. She said she missed her mother. Mary used to love brushing her hair the most. She wanted her father to style her hair similarly. Mark also missed his wife. He tried to brush his daughter's hair the way Mary used to. Luckily, he was quite skilled at it. Even Winnie praised it for being exactly the same as how Mary did it. To fill his daughter with hope for the future, Mark told her another story about a hero slaying monsters. Winnie had heard this story since she was little. She had no pets to accompany her, and had never watched TV or listened to the radio. But she had her father and his stories. But Mark always exaggerated the details. He said the hero only swung his axe with all his strength once, and 100 monsters were sent to the underworld right away. After finishing the story, Mark called his daughter to eat the seagull eggs, but she was older now and not so easily fooled. She knew no one could do such a thing, and she suspected that the main character of the story was actually her father. Mark had indeed killed monsters when the rift first appeared. The monsters' weakness was their heads, while the weakness of infected and mutated men was their brains. He was the first to discover this. The reason he kept telling this story to his daughter was that he hoped she would pass the story on, so that future generations would know where the monsters came from, and how humans found the hero, and fought back against the monsters. Like Mary, Mark firmly believed that one day the monsters would be driven away, and Earth would return to its former vibrant state. Winnie was greatly inspired. The next day, Mark took a box of mines to the seaside. He was afraid that the monsters would evolve. Maybe one day they would learn to swim. Naturally, the mines could also guard against humans and the infected. In the apocalypse, people's intentions were unpredictable. After successfully burying the mines, he and Winnie observed the opposite shore with binoculars, watching the monsters wandering by the See, Mark told his daughter, the monsters actually had no eyes, but their other senses were surprisingly sharp, and they would make good use of the infected, sharing the information seen by the infected through brainwaves. At this point, Winnie asked a very innocent question, that is, many humans hadn't harmed the monsters, so why did the monsters want to harm humans? Mark smiled and said that humans were a threat to the monsters, and any threat must be wiped out. Then he took Winnie for special training, because Mark knew that one day he would leave his daughter. He couldn't protect her for the rest of her life, so Winnie must have the ability to survive on her own, and Winnie was very promising. Her skills became more agile, the way she wielded the knife also had the charm of her mother. Mark was taking care of his small vegetable garden. Luckily, he had brought some seeds with him. When he came to the island, this ensured that the father and daughter wouldn't starve to death. While busy weeding the vegetable garden, Mark suddenly noticed something. He quickly ran into the house to give his daughter a surprise. Winnie asked if it was a bug. Mark opened his hand. Inside was a bright red strawberry, but Winnie didn't recognize it at all. He quickly explained and told her to taste it. As Winnie held it and looked at it carefully, Mark said he thought strawberries had long been extinct. He never expected they would grow wild on this small island. It was simply a miracle. Upon hearing this, Winnie told her father to eat one too. He said he had already eaten one earlier. There used to be plenty of them. Winnie didn't hesitate any longer and took a bite. She found the taste surprisingly delicious. Mark continued to tell her stories about the past. When he and Mary got married, they ordered an especially delicious strawberry cake. Through her father's words, Winnie learned about cream for the first time. The next day, Winnie ran down the mountain to get spring water. She accidentally looked ahead. She actually saw a girl, so she shouted out suddenly. The girl was attracted by the sound and ran towards her quickly, but Winnie panicked instantly. She was terrified that the girl would trigger the mines. She shouted loudly for her to stop. Luckily, the girl stopped in time. Then, following Winnie's instructions, she left the minefield. The girl was crying bitterly. She sobbed that the monsters were simply too terrifying. Winnie first took her to her secret base. It was a cave. After lighting a fire, Winnie told her to drink some water to calm down. At this point, she noticed that the girl had a wound on her head, so she asked what had happened. The girl said it might have been from the boat collision. Her family of 3 had been on their way to her grandmother's house to take shelter. Unexpectedly, there were monsters in the water. They hadn't been able to swim before. Several monsters capsized their boat. Her brother and father had both died. Learning about the girl's tragic experience, Winnie felt deep sympathy. She quickly took out the dry rations her father had made, told her to eat some if she was hungry. She had originally planned to go home to get some other food, but the girl was too scared. She kept begging not to be left alone in the cave. Winnie reluctantly agreed. Suddenly the scene shifted. Winnie found herself in the woods. Suddenly, rapid footsteps came from behind. She quickly placed her hand on her knife. On guard, the person approaching was actually her mother. The mother and daughter hugged and cried. After a few seconds, Mary insisted they leave immediately. Winnie asked what about her father. Mary said humanity needed warriors. Mark had a bad leg and couldn't fight. Someone so useless didn't deserve to go with them.
We're not totally immune, you know?
No matter how badass we may be.
Winnie looked around and realized that everything just now was only a dream. She panted heavily. After calming down, she knew her father must be worried, so she quickly packed up and headed home. As soon as she got into the door, she almost got attacked. Luckily, her father stopped in time. Mark asked angrily where she had been last night. Winnie didn't dare to tell the truth about the girl. She had to lie and say she got lost in the woods. She found a safe place to sleep for the night. Her father didn't doubt her. He told Winnie to eat something to fill her stomach. During this time, he said the canned food they brought was almost gone, and the weather was getting colder and colder. There was nothing left to eat in the vegetable garden either. They had to be frugal to get through this. At this point, Winnie asked if the pistol belonged to that man. Mark said they had no other choice. Because he was a man, he would definitely mutate after being scratched. Then he reminded his daughter to remember that women could also mutate. It was just that the probability was very low. Late at night, Winnie confirmed that her father was sound asleep. She secretly got up and picked up the only 2 remaining cans, but upon careful consideration, she put one can back. Then Winnie ran to the cave in the dark. The girl who got the can immediately ate greedily. Seeing that she was almost done eating, Winnie reminded her to eat sparingly, because this kind of thing was very scarce. The girl asked if she lived alone. Winnie didn't dare to tell the truth. She said yes. Then she took out her cherished picture book and explained the animals in it to the girl: fish, elephants, flowers, and so on. These were all things they had never seen before.
The world is bright and beautiful.
After finishing the picture book, Winnie told the girl another story, saying that the hero had been fighting for humanity. They killed the first batch of monsters. They thought the war was over. Unexpectedly, an injured man suddenly cried out in pain. Then he mutated in front of everyone. The hero immediately swung his axe, successfully finding a way to kill the mutated monster. She believed that he would close the rift later, putting an end to the suffering of all living beings. After hearing the story, the girl rekindled her hope for survival. Winnie was also very happy. She gave her beloved hat to the girl, then she hurried home before dawn. The next day, Mark continued training his daughter in combat. He noticed that she was getting more and more skilled, so he suggested playing a game with her. They played Eagle Catches Chickens. Winnie laughed heartily, but Mark suddenly lost consciousness and fainted, because he knew there wasn't much food left to let his daughter have more to eat. He hadn't eaten much lately. Winnie quickly helped her father back home. She knew he was starving, so she wanted to make some soup, but her father refused.
We have to keep rationing until she comes.
He told Winnie that she had to become stronger. Mark had said this sentence hundreds of times, but Winnie had waited on the island for too long. Her mother still hadn't appeared. She didn't want to be trapped anymore. Instead, she wanted to fight like her mother, even if the final result was death. Mark flew into a rage, shouting that he only had one wish, that Winnie would live well. But after calming down, Mark took out his old sword from the box.
Well, today, you proved that.
The moment the sword was unsheathed, Winnie was overwhelmed with excitement. This was what she had always dreamed of, to become a true warrior, and having this sword was a great start. The next day, Winnie wanted to show off the sword to the girl, so she told her father she was going out to patrol, to see if she could find some food. He told her to be careful about everything. Winnie said it would be fine. Then she waved the sword and went to the cave, excitedly saying that she had brought something good. But when she got close to the fire, Winnie froze in shock. All the treasures she had given the girl were torn to pieces. This even included the birthday gift hat Mary had knitted for her. Winnie was heartbroken, not understanding what had happened. At this point, a strange noise came from behind. She quickly followed the sound, and found the girl squatting not far away. She asked why she had destroyed her treasures. The girl remained silent. Winnie hurried closer, only to be shocked to find that the girl had mutated. Winnie was terrified. She frantically tried to remember if the girl had any wounds. When she recalled the wound on her head, she was still in shock. The girl pounced on her and knocked her to the ground. Winnie completely forgot how to fight. She could only cry helplessly. In the nick of time, Mark arrived and fired frantically at the monster, but the bullets ran out quickly. The enraged monster charged at him. Mark seized the opportunity and stabbed the sword fiercely into its brain. Then he quickly took his daughter to a well-lit area to check her body. After confirming that Winnie hadn't been scratched, Mark told his crying daughter to cheer up. Their current situation was very dangerous. The mutated monster must have sent a signal to the other monsters. Those lunatics would do anything after receiving the signal. They couldn't risk betting that they couldn't swim. To be safe, they had to take the boat immediately and hide on another deserted island. Winnie confessed that the monsters could already swim. Mark quickened his pace upon hearing this. He told his daughter that the mines could only delay them for more than 10 minutes. They had to board the boat as quickly as possible. At the same time, a large army of monsters was swimming rapidly towards the island. After landing on the island, they triggered the mines. Hearing the roars, Mark and his daughter didn't dare to stop. The two planned to take a shortcut across a single plank bridge. This was part of Winnie's daily training, so even though there was an abyss below, she walked towards the other end without fear. After successfully crossing, she was about to tell her father to follow, but was shocked to find a mutated monster behind him. She quickly turned back to help. Then she resolutely drew her sword. But she didn't expect the mutated monster's brain was still intact. It directly activated a Bluetooth mode to control the body and continue fighting. Winnie was shocked by this. Luckily, her father stepped on the mutated monster's head in time, crushing it, and reminded her daughter not to forget that the mutated monster's weakness was its brain. Winnie said in horror that this must be the girl's brother. Then the father and daughter continued rushing towards the seaside. After running for a short while, Mark fell to the ground, due to a recurrence of his old leg injury. To make matters worse, another mutated monster chased after them. Winnie bravely drew her sword and struck at its head. Then she helped her father and successfully reached the seaside. But Mark didn't seem to want to leave. After instructing his daughter on how to start the engine, he revealed the scratch on his chest. Winnie couldn't accept the reality. Mark quickly reasoned with her. At this point, the monster's roars were getting closer and closer. Winnie knew she had to leave, so she ran towards the boat quickly, following her father's instructions. She cut the rope tying the boat with all her strength, but strangely enough, the boat didn't slide into the sea. Winnie realized there was something wrong with the slipway. She pushed the boat with all her strength. Luckily, the boat actually started moving, but it got stuck completely after moving only a short distance. Winnie didn't understand why fate was playing such a cruel joke at this point. She tried to push the boat again, but she failed. She looked despairingly at her father, who was buying her time, only to find that he was showing signs of mutation. She knew she could only rely on herself now, so she resolutely drew her sword, ready to fight at any time. Mark looked at his finally grown-up daughter with immense relief. At that very point, sudden barking came from the sea. Winnie followed the sound and saw that it was her mother coming with a group of people. Her mother had actually found her a living dog. Winnie was greatly inspired. Instead of shrinking back in the face of the approaching monster army, she shouted for them to come at her. The film ends here. The theme of seeking refuge on a deserted island from an otherworldly monster invasion has really been overused. The movie doesn't bring any new twists at all, and it's easy to make the audience feel aesthetic fatigue. Moreover, the monsters aren't afraid of bullets. It can be easily killed with a sword. Isn't this setting a bit unreasonable? Of course, this isn't the most absurd part. It's one thing that the female lead is always overly compassionate. Her father trained her carefully for years, but she falls apart as soon as it comes to actual combat. The only successful time, she just swung her sword once, with no extra movements at all and won. One can't help but admire how cooperative the monster was. Besides, how did all the animals go extinct? Why is it that only seagulls survived? Aren't they going to explain this? Of course, the movie isn't completely without merits. The scenery of the deserted island and wilderness is quite stunning. It's said that all the shots are on location, which is indeed more realistic than just using a green screen. If you enjoy my commentary, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is my greatest motivation.